But hi, it looks like it's 1:40 on my time, and so let's get this started because I know I want to answer as many questions as I can. Hi everyone, my name is Kenny and I am the Regional Admissions Officer for the University of Illinois. I cover the Northern California territory and I'm actually based out in San Francisco, and so I'm not too far from you all. Usually I'd be on your campus and we'd be having a great discussion about the university and I can answer any of your questions. This year's going to be slightly different, as you already know that, are probably experiencing that already with your own classes. And so I hope that this is not too much, Zoom overload for you at this time. But this presentation over the next 20-30 minutes is very informal, super casual. I just want to be able to answer as many questions as I can for you all about the university and as you're starting to apply for admission in the coming year. And so I'm going to start by just releasing a poll here just to see who's in the audience, just so I know who I'm talking to. I'm going to guess seniors, a couple juniors. Okay, we got a good mix of sophomore through senior. And so that lets me know who's in the audience and really helpful in terms of what I talk about. And so good to know. And so I will start off by, let's just start off by presenting. My duty, of course, is to talk about the university in Illinois and promote it, but I want to be here to serve as support for you all as you are looking into college over the next few years, and supplement that with the efforts of your high school counselor to answer any questions you might have about the college admissions process, be that at the University of Illinois or elsewhere. And so with that, let's begin. And so I want to start off by talking a little bit about our alumni and student accomplishments over the years, right? And so for over 150 years, our students, alumni, and faculty have really come to shape the world in many different ways. And begins with the involvement you get on campus as a student in your campus community. And then from there, our students have gone to innovate and inspire new and better solutions to those global problems over the years. And so these examples include the development of things like the world's first web browser in 1993, which has obviously led to other inventions like YouTube and PayPal from our own alumni and students. For our tech buffs in the audience, you may have heard of devices like LEDs, MRIs, integrated circuits, transistors, things like that, more Illinois creations. And then if you fast forward that to 2020, we were recently approved by the FDA to perform saliva-based testing for COVID-19. I thought that was a really cool accomplishment over the last few weeks, actually, very recent. And this is a method that our campus researchers have actually recently developed that allow for results within just a few hours. This really helps ease the constant burden of these costly tests and delays in getting the results, which is very common with the traditional swab testing for COVID-19. And so these are just some of the projects that are being done on campus currently that highlight what we call the power of I. And so I hope that during my short presentation today, you can at least begin to envision how you can harness this power in your own pursuits for higher education. And so at the University of Illinois, we have close to 34,000 undergraduate students. And so with a total enrollment of nearly 51,000. And so we have all students represented from 50 United States and 113 different countries, making us one of the largest and most diverse secondary institutions, post-secondary institutions in the United States. And so in terms of where our students are actually coming from, they're really everywhere. And so approximately 25% of our undergraduates are domestic, out-of-state students, with the majority coming from the West Coast, primarily California, but more specifically Silicon Valley. And so California, we actually get the most out-of-state students from outside the state of Illinois. But you'll find that our students are coming from all over the state, country, and world. And so students come to U of I for a variety of reasons, although I like to think that our world-renowned education is that prime reason, right? And so I'm just going to release a second poll here just to see what you're all interested in. As the number 14th public university in the country, we have over 150 majors across 11 different academic communities, ranging from the Granger College of Engineering, which is ranked 6th in the country for our engineering undergrad programs, to our Geese College of Business with a #2 accounting program, to even our School of Information Sciences, which is our newest college and program that you can guess it houses information sciences, but we have excellent programs overall. In terms of everyone that's in the audience today, I see a lot of engineers, which is very common with the University of Illinois, but we also have business and fine arts represented. So I'm glad we have some diversity there. But what's really cool is that by having such an expansive and diverse collection of majors really allows you to get a very specialized educational experience. And so I like to think that, for example, instead of general biology, which is a major most schools have, here at the University of Illinois, we actually have molecular and cellular bio, which is biology at the micro level, but we also have integrative biology, which is biology at the macro level. And so you can get very specialized in some of the programs that we have. We don't just have general engineering here, we have very specialized forms of engineering programs that you can really take advantage of. And so this is the link you can go to, or you just go on the admissions website, you can't miss it. You can look at our full list of majors. We have tons of majors for you to choose from. But what's really great about attending U of I is that you really get to enjoy living in the twin towns of Champaign and Urbana. So we are consistently named a top college town in America because of our status as a micro-urban community for our students. And so this means that we have the amenities of a large city with a thriving arts and culture scene through things like our Krannert Center for Performing Arts, where tickets are only $10 a show for a nice fancy show, whether that's a concert, symphony orchestra, opera, you name it. Comedy shows are held there. We have other various concerts and festivals that really make the town feel like a larger city, but everywhere is still very accessible by walking, biking, or simply driving. And so we truly are a college town where really students run the show. In terms of our actual location, if you've never been to campus before, we are in central Illinois. So we're actually 2 hours south of Chicago by driving, but we're about 2 to 2.5 hours from Indianapolis over here in Indiana and St. Louis over here in Missouri. But if you're coming from California, such as myself, you'll take a flight that's either 4.5 to 5 hours, not including the layover, that's either in Texas or Chicago. And then once you're in either Texas or Chicago, you'll actually fly to campus because we have a campus airport that's only 10 minutes away from the actual campus itself. And so it's a small airport. It's called the Willard Airport. Check it out. It literally has 4 terminals. And TSA actually goes on breaks, goes on lunch. And so it's super quick too. It's probably the easiest TSA that you'll ever go through in your life. But what's really cool is that, yeah, it's a small airport, but you get pretty much a direct flight to campus if you were to fly. Pretty much the only way you can get to campus from California. For the sake of time, I don't think I'm going to go into every aspect of campus life that you can get involved in, but I will say that because of our university really thrives on becoming, our students becoming engaged with the university and the community, you will find so many opportunities to get involved. We actually have over 1,800 registered student organizations for you to choose from academic honor societies to community service organizations, club sports, fraternities and sororities, and Greek life actually makes up about 25% of our student body, which is really cool too. But because of also our history and traditions, sports are also going to take will take prominence there at the university, right? And so we're part of the Big Ten Athletic Conference, which means that we compete against our Midwest peers in 19 Division I men's and women's sports, which is pretty cool too. Try our best in all the games, of course. And so when we're talking about involvement, though, involvement really spans all disciplines and not just clubs, right? We also consider internships, research opportunities, and study abroad. And so you'll find that nearly 70% of our students will participate in internships and or research of some kind. And while we have specialized support services like career centers to assist students in providing those internships and co-ops for students while they're on campus, I've really come to find that students are very proactive and will actively seek out these opportunities on their own. And so internships can vary in what they consist of and where they're located, either on and off campus. In Chicago, or in another major metropolitan area. Specifically for our California students, a lot of students actually will come home to the Bay Area because of all the great opportunities here in Silicon Valley. And so we'll have things like internships like Amazon, Facebook, Granular, Lockheed Martin for all our engineering students. The Big Four accounting firms is highly represented here. We also have a research park located on campus. It's one of the few college campuses to actually have a major research park, and they actually house Fortune 500 companies that employ undergrad interns in a variety of industries. Within Research Park, we have what we call Enterprise Works, which is a 43,000 square foot startup incubator that serves as a facility and resource center for our science and tech-based entrepreneurs. In terms of our actual academic research, we are a Research One institution, which means research is a big part of campus life, right? And students can start as early as their freshman year if they'd like, although sophomore through senior year is going to be much more common. And so projects can be done on your own with your peers, assisting a professor's or graduate student's project. That's also really neat. And depending on when you conduct your project, I like to say that you can even get published in a real research journal before you can even legally buy a beer in some cases. For our engineers in the audience, the Granger College of Engineering is actually recognized as one of the most cited, if not the most cited, in the entire world for engineering research. And so this really just showcases the amount of research that is constantly being produced by the university. And so if you ever look into engineering research projects or looking at journal articles, a lot of it will be sourced from the University of Illinois, which I think is really really fascinating and really neat thing to do. You can even take your internship and research opportunities abroad if you'd like, or you can take those traditional classes abroad. About 30% of our students choose to study abroad in a given year. And some study abroad opportunities include marine ecology in the Galapagos Islands or doing an internship at a cheese factory in Rome. And so a lot of opportunities there. And so in terms of our support services, as a student, you'll have access to a variety of different services designed to really ensure your success at the university. And fun fact that you may not know about the University of Illinois is that we're actually at the forefront of disability services for universities. And so if you find that another school has a disability support program, it's likely modeled after the University of Illinois. We're actually the world's first post-secondary disability support service program in the entire world, which is awesome. In terms of housing on campus, as a student, as a freshman student, you are expected to live in campus housing for at least your first year. This can include on-campus university housing or off-campus private certified housing. Within university housing, we have 35 residence halls consisting of single to triple person bedrooms. We also have 11 living learning communities that you can opt in to live as well, which are basically themed floors or buildings that focus on areas like business, health professions, women in STEM, honors, just to name a few. And at the University of Illinois, we truly are dedicated to providing you with that quality of education that you can ultimately use to either further your studies even more, or could for you to directly influence the world upon graduation through an impactful career with the skills that you've learned along the way. So the Career Center actually hosts several college fairs that are held throughout the year for our students to meet with potential employers from various industries. Last year we had over 9,700 unique employers that came to campus, many of which are from the Fortune 100 companies. I believe like 86 of the Fortune 100 companies were there to campus to meet with students. And really cool is that many of these recruiters are alums of the university, which really provides that excellent networking resource to our current students. And so that was a lot of info about campus life, right? And so I want to shift gears a little bit to talk about how you can harness that power that I was talking about earlier and start your application at the university. And so for our seniors, this is really important. For everyone else, wait for it until next year. But really important, big change this year is that we don't have an early action notification date, but we still have early action filing and regular application filing. And so the early action deadline is November 15th. This is if you are applying to admission and you want to have early consideration or priority consideration, as we call it, for things like competitive majors, honors programs, scholarships. I highly recommend applying by November 15th. If your major is computer science, definitely do that. Give me one second. I'm checking my questions right here. Oops, let me say. If your peers need a password, the password is UIUC. And so hopefully you don't need a password, but if it is, it's UIUC. But yeah, as I was saying, for the important dates, I highly encourage if you're applying to a selective major or if UIUC is your top school, definitely apply by November 15th. Important to note, though, that this isn't binding, unlike what we call early decision. And so some schools use early decision, which means when you apply by that date, if you're admitted, you're definitely committing to the university. For us, we just want you to be able to have your application earlier considered for priority, but you're not committed if you don't want to. And so the regular filing period, though, is January 5th, which you absolutely have to have your application in by then. The important thing to note here is that regardless of when you apply by, your application will not be released until mid-February, and that's for everyone. What else? And so we don't have rolling admission either. Whenever you submit your application, it doesn't really matter unless it's a particular kind of filing period. If you submit your application tomorrow, because the application opened up Wednesday, I think on September 1st, versus your friend that's applying by November 13th, we will treat it the same way, which is part of early action. Of course, if you're applying if you applied in December versus your friend that submits their app in early November, that's going to be a little bit different, right? Because you're in the early action versus regular action period. But in terms of that, other than date, don't rush yourself at this time. All right, how to apply. We have two application systems, My Illini or Coalition. And so those are the only two. If you're thinking, are you on Common App? We are not on Common App. And so if you put University of Illinois on Common App, you're likely applying to Springfield or Chicago campuses. Excellent schools, but not the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, right? So either apply to My Illini or Coalition, completely up to you which one you want to apply using. It's just your preference. I absolutely do not care either way. I do care if you send us your money, though. And so an application fee of $50 for domestic or $75 for international students. If you qualify for a fee waiver, talk to your high school counselor. We can see what we can do with that. But your high school counselor will have more info about that, and they can work with us to get fees waived if needed. All right, so how we review. So this slide is going to be big. And so if I miss something, I'll answer any more questions you might have about it. So feel free to send things through the chat or in the Q&A there. So we review 4 main parts to your application on a normal year, right? It's all listed on your screen there. 3, if you're not submitting your test scores. And so for our fall 2021 applicants, so seniors right now, this pertains mostly to you because we've gone test optional for this year. For all my juniors and sophomores in the audience, just assume things will get back to normal and we will request test scores from you. Obviously, if you cannot register for a test at this moment, do not do it. I mean, you just can't. For now, it's only this year's test optional. I cannot speak beyond this year whether it's test optional or not. For now, it's test optional for just this coming year. And so for our seniors on your application, you'll have a question that simply asks, do you want your test scores used in your review? Your answer to this question is very important because your decision cannot be changed after you submit your application. If you're telling me that you want test scores reviewed, you better have test scores to submit. If you choose and that you do not want to take or you do not want to submit test scores and say in October, a vaccine is done and we're all healthy again and able to go out and take tests, and you, from all that studying over quarantine period, you get a 1,600 on your SAT scores. Unfortunately, we cannot review it because you said you did not want to submit those scores. So be very careful on that question. If you already have a test score for some reason and you're debating whether to actually submit it, ask yourself the question, is this score a strong representation of my abilities? If it is, go ahead and submit it if you'd like. If it's not and you feel like your grades, extracurriculars, and essays are going to show your potential much more, better, and then go ahead and not submit it. But really, if you eliminate your test scores from the equation, it doesn't mean 25%, if all of these were 25% of your grade, for example, by not doing test scores, it doesn't mean you're down 25% compared to peers that have it, right? It just means our grading rubric is going to change, as opposed to everything being worth 25%. Not exact numbers by any means, but assume everything is 25% just for ease. In this case, by eliminating test scores, we're changing the rubric for you, right? So instead of 25%, these three are going to represent 33% of your application review, if that makes it a little bit easier to comprehend. For your application, we will consider at least these three, right? And of course, test scores if you choose to submit it. For grades, though, we will mainly want to see A's and B's across the board, although you can expect the more selective programs will want to see mostly A's, right? Especially for those core classes. So for example, something like engineering would probably want to look at math and physics courses a little bit more more closely. And so we would love to see A's across the board, but especially in those classes. For something like business, something like math, for example. What else? And so we'll want to see that you challenge yourself as well, right? And so that's the course rigor part in the grades and course rigor section. And so if your school offers APs, which I know your school does, take advantage of those classes without overwhelming yourself, of course, but we want to see that you're keeping up with your peers. And so some schools don't like to use APs for whatever reason. They could be under-resourced. They could just they just don't believe in the AP model for their student curriculum. So when we're comparing students, we can't compare you against another school because that wouldn't be fair, right? Some schools offer APs, some don't. We'd be comparing apples to oranges. And so we actually compare you to your peers and what we consider average APs at your school. If we find that your peers, when you're applying for admission and all your peers, the average APs that your peers are taking is about 5 classes, but you're taking 1, that's going to be a red flag in some cases. But if your peers are taking 5 APs and you're being an overachiever here and taking 8, that could be really nice to see as well, and that could be very beneficial for you. And so just something important to note there. So obviously seniors, you're in those classes already, but sophomores and juniors, if you're not challenging yourself too much with the curriculum, talk to your counselor and see if you can take more APs in the meantime for the next few years. In terms of your extracurricular activities, these are any activities that you have done in or out of the classroom. We have absolutely no expectation that you have a certain activity. A lot of times parents ask me, what is something my daughter needs to absolutely do to get admission? I don't know. There's no expectation. I can't say you all need to be student body president. That is impossible, right? But do what you can and what's available to you. And so this will really depend on the major you apply for, your interest, and what is accessible to you in your area. Some students have patents and inventions already. Excellent. That is also really expensive, to do, and not everyone has access to that. That's totally fine. Some students come with experiences from clubs, sports teams, bands. Truthfully, we're not expecting you to be a jack of all trades. I don't expect you to be student body president, but also star of your soccer team, but also, be able to create all these inventions with time to do robotics and hackathons on the weekends. Do what is interesting to you and what's doable in your schedule. A lot of times students feel like they have to have an instrument to get into college. That is not the case at all. I sucked at sports and I could not play an instrument in high school myself, so I didn't put on my application. You shouldn't have to either. We value quality over quantity in terms of your activities, and so you can list up to 8 activities on your application. If you want to, go for it. You don't have to. But I'd truthfully rather see a student with, if you could, consistently strong activities for all 8 activities. But if that's not impossible, I would rather see a student with 5 really good activities that they've done since their freshman year of high school and are now president in their senior year, as opposed to a senior that has 8 activities and all of these activities they just joined their senior year. So something to think about there. Activities that happen to relate to your major would be helpful, but especially for your essay when you're writing it, but it's not required. But we can talk more about that later too. And so finally, for your essay, we can talk a lot about this. I can use a whole session on this, but basically your essay simply, for our essay, we simply ask, what are you doing in or out of the classroom that is exploring your interest in this particular major that you've chosen? We do not look at the coalition prompts. And so if you're on coalition, you see more prompts. You can go ahead and fill that out if you want to. For other schools, they might use it, but for the University of Illinois, we're only looking at the question that we asked, which is your major selection. It's a why major question, right? But that's important to note too, right? And so it's a why major. And so don't talk about why UIUC the entire time. It's great that you are a fourth generation legacy, but that's not what's going to get you into the university. Your interest and your connection to your major is going to be kind of that. And so you'll break down your major into your past, present, and future, right? That's just kind of my advice there. Read the prompt carefully and look at what it's really saying. We want to see you talk about how you've come to discover this major and what you're doing in the here and now. But it's important to note that we don't want you to spend half the essay talking about your interest in Legos or your interest in mechanical engineering because you started playing with Legos in the 2nd grade. I'd rather see your interest in mechanical engineering because you've started working on robotics while in high school, or you're doing a particular research project out of school with a professor, something like that. More recent activities, particularly in high school, are going to be much more impactful. And then, of course, talk about what you want to do with it in the future. That's always lovely to see as well. And you can select a second choice, too, I forgot to mention on your application. Most majors you would be able to select as a second choice if you do write a second choice essay, or if you do select a second choice, you do have a second choice essay. For our undeclared students in the audience, you do not have to write the same essay. It's basically just going to ask you, what are you exploring? So it's not too different from the traditional essay prompt. All right, so application advice. So for seniors, a bulk of your work in the coming weeks is really going to come down to your essay and your extracurriculars, right? You really can't do much about your 9th through 11th grades now. If you failed some classes, what can you do? You can explain it to us in your essay, in your application, but not much you can do there. For 12th grades, your courses typically are pretty much set at this point. We're not going to ask for any senior year grades unless, we really need to see them. But for the most part, we'll see the classes that you're taking for your senior year, which is still great because we want to see those AP courses and college level courses. But if you wouldn't have grades. For everyone else applying at a later time, though, looking into taking those rigorous and challenging courses, as I mentioned earlier, is a good start. Talk to your counselor and see, is this a tough course load for my school? And for everyone else, too, start looking at those clubs and activities that you can join now. For seniors, you're kind of stuck with what you have, right? So you're really going to be looking at doing and reporting those activities that really demonstrate teamwork, collaboration, and leadership. And so excellent to be president of your club. We want to see, though, that you're demonstrating that your activities can show teamwork and collaboration, because some of our majors really push that, especially engineering, just because our university is really really big on collaboration, especially in our engineering programs. And so any activities that can show that you know how to work well in teams is always great to see. In terms of your essay, lots of advice there, right? And so I would recommend, if you've started your essay already, feel free to raise your hand if you want to, but if you have a quote in your essay, if you started off your essay with a quote, feel free to anonymously raise your hand. Only I could see it anyways. I would recommend avoiding that if possible. Yeah, avoid that. I'll be blunt with you all. I review so many applications, especially for engineering, and the quotes are not very strong. A lot of quotes come from Shakespeare, Dr. Seuss, or dead presidents that students just Google. Or a quote from their mom, which is a little bit more unique, but sometimes it's like, what was the point of putting this here? Only put a quote if it really makes sense to your application, not because you don't know how to start your essay. I promise you, my biggest tip, though, is as you're writing, if you have to put a quote, fine, start off with a quote. But as you're writing your essay, you'll find that you start answering the question that we asked in the middle to last half of your essay. So my second kind of advice there is, most oftentimes, Your draft, you can probably cut the first half of your essay off. Most of it is just fluff and setting up the context. Re-edit it a bit just so you're setting up the context, but very quickly. It's a 400-word essay for us, right? And so we want to see the interesting stuff and the stuff that we're asking for, not all the setup and the nice creative English writing, figurative language and things like that that your English teacher probably taught you for a creative writing paper. I love to read those creative and unique perspectives on essay responses, truly, but a lot of times your desire to make your essay so unique that it overshadows a main point is tough to read, right? And so sometimes I've received poems in the essay response, which cool, but personally, I hated my English classes in high school. I hated breaking down figurative language and what colors mean in writing, in a nonfiction or fictional writing. I don't want to do that when I'm reading a student's essay, right? Make it simple. You can use big words, but remember, I'm human here. As I'm reading your essay, I don't want to think too much, right? I just want to know your connection, which is what I'm asking for. There is a section in your application about how COVID-19 has impacted you. I would recommend you use that if necessary, but don't spend your essay time talking too much about COVID-19 and your major with that unless it happens to be related. There's a section in your application for that. And then your essay, kind of repeating what I said earlier, but the essay simply asks you in your particular major interest, not about your interest in UIUC. A lot of times students think this is a why UIUC paper, and they'll talk about being a fourth generation legacy and being a lifelong fighting Illini fan and going to all the football games and wanting to make mom and dad proud. Great. Save that for Berkeley's if they're asking for that. For us, we didn't ask for that. We asked about your major. And so make sure you focus on that point. All right. And so that was kind of my biggest pieces of advice there. That's our contact information on the screen. For me specifically, I'll send it to everyone here in the audience. Again, my name is Kenny, and I live in San Francisco, and I cover the Bay Area in terms of recruiting. But you're welcome to email me as well after this presentation with any questions that you might have. But with that, I will open the floor up. If you guys have any questions for me for the rest of the time here, I could certainly answer it. So use the Q&A there.